Hello, everyone. It's great to see you for another online webinar that we are hosting on behalf of WISE Summits through our PPM workout platform. I can actually see very familiar names and some new faces joining us as well, which is really good to see. So welcome everyone, wherever you are in the world. Good morning to our American friends, and good afternoon, good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you here. We've got the wonderful Matthew Kokonan joining us today. We won't be able to see his lovely face, unfortunately, because due to some traveling interests of his own, he was kind enough to actually make it for the presentation. But we will be able to see his picture, and everyone is familiar with that picture. Actually, use it for our banner as well, and that's why you're all here to hear him talk. He's got a keynote ready for us, and he will tell you all about it. But before he starts, I would just like to tell you while we're all here, and the aim and the target of this is really simple: connection. On behalf of WISE Summits, we're creating this PPM platform, PPM workout platform for all experts and professionals from the pharma field to be able to function together on one platform. And they kind of serves as a tool for everyone to be able to inspire one another, share knowledge, and this is a big part of that. So we've got the PPM Summer Talks conference, which you're being part of right now, and it's going to run until the 27th of August. So we still got a few more weeks, almost 4 full weeks of another online webinars, which are really exciting. And I'm hoping that many people will keep joining us, because it seems to be really wonderful. And we've received great feedback to, regarding the webinars. So hello, everyone. And I'm going to give a few, if a chance for Matthew to say hi, so I wouldn't talk constantly.
Yes, hello everyone. It's an honor to be able to meet with you all today, and I'm excited to talk about incentivizing change and how we can approach transformations and leveling up our project portfolio management capabilities at our company. I've been working at CSL, which is a mid-sized pharmaceutical company based out of kind of the greater Philly area for a little over 3.5 years, and I'm helping lead our enterprise portfolio management capability, synchronizing that with a lot of our network strategic decisions and what's coming down the pipeline from R&D that needs to be commercialized. Before that, having worked in similar capacities at both large and small companies like BioMarin and AbbVie, I've got a real passion for the life sciences, and really love not just the industry and the mission that we have to try and help people who are very much in need, but the challenges that we face within our industry are both important and fun challenges to tackle, and try and find ways of creating a lot of value for our organizations, as well as solving complex problems. So again, it's a pleasure to be here today, and I look forward to talking with you further about the topic of the day.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I really appreciate you accepting my invite. It's great, and it's an honor really to have speakers like yourself to be able to join us for an hour long online webinar due to restrictions and everything else. But hopefully I will be able to meet you in person someday soon at the conference, and we're gonna have a good time. But you've mentioned that you're working at the CSL Behring and it's been for like almost 4 years that you've been working there as a director, right? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell me, please, how did you get into this specific position? What was your winning point that you kind of a proof that you knew you belonged there?
Yeah, there were probably a couple key points. I mean, the first was the opportunity to leverage both experience and, my education background to build a global capability. The
Mm-hmm.
CSL Behring, like many pharmaceutical companies, operate in a lot of different regions, and the teams are comprised of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And I would say that the number one thing that both was a fit for CSL and certainly a fit for me was an opportunity to try and build these processes that could take advantage of the best perspectives, the best strengths across all of our major regions. So, we certainly have a large presence in the United States, but we've got large presences in Germany, Switzerland, and Australia as well. And each of those regions brings in unique perspectives on how to approach problem solving,
Mm-hmm.
how to work. And I think for me, the key was being able to not just learn more about these different nuances, but be able to take that input and craft a very lean and efficient project portfolio management capability that could truly be world class. And where CSL was in terms of going from a very site focused way of operating to a global one, it served as, really a remarkable opportunity to have nearly a clean slate and build a pretty cool project portfolio management capability that has indeed come to fruition and produced a lot of value for the company. So it's been an exciting 4 years. Let me put it that
It
way.
honestly sounds really interesting, and as you said, exciting. So what would you say are the biggest accomplishments that you're most proud of, whether that's at CSL or in your overall career?
Yeah, I would say that being able to take project portfolio management, which often can be all about the processes, a lot of people perceive it to be kind of bureaucratic or routine, and really develop some innovative ways of integrating processes together, and importantly, using data uh, through newer tools, in our case we use predominantly Power BI, but tools like Tableau, like Click,
Mm-hmm.
etc., and really change the way that we talk about both the planning and the execution of our projects and our portfolio, and really connecting across areas that too often are pretty siloed, between manufacturing, R&D, and commercial, and really building important bridges. And the fact that we're now really into assessing value and optimizing portfolio value across all of those capital and non-capital projects, including resources, is, I think, probably one of the biggest achievements that I've been able to, tackle so far.
Mhm. Thank you for answering. And if you could just tell me, this is going to be my last question before you start your keynote. What is the biggest skill that you're required to use on in your position on a day-to-day basis? What is like the strongest skill that's required from you?
Well, that's a tough one, because I think, depending on the day and depending on the
Mm-hmm.
audience, you have to be able to flex and pull certain strengths. So if I were to quickly come to an answer, I would say that the most important skill is the ability to build trusting relationships with folks. And that ability to build trusting relationships comes from a place of having credibility, and
I
a
agree.
clear motivation for everyone to win. Something I try and tell a lot of the folks that I mentor is, so often in our jobs we encounter people where it's what's called a zero-sum game. If they're going to win, someone else has to lose, or if someone else wins, they will lose. And I try and challenge that perspective and say, there's so much opportunity in the work that we do. If our focus can be on everyone being able to take away a win, and collectively that can help our companies win and ultimately our patients win, then we're going to be having more constructive conversations. We're going to be making better decisions, and quite honestly, we'll be enjoying our work, and there'll be purpose in the processes and the tools that we put in place, that when we're just doing rote activity or not having that, everyone can win kind of mentality, then I think we get into those challenges of that we've all faced in our
Mhm.
jobs, where there's less constructive things going on.
I completely agree, and I've been nodding ever since you started ever since you started answering that question. So I feel like it's a very beautifully put, and it's wonderful. And I'm going to link that to something I read on your LinkedIn, and I'm going to quote you because I think it's a very beautiful sentence that you put there. You say, organizations face the challenge of evolving or dying, and the challenges organizations face are ever more complex. As such, strategic vision must be creative, holistic, and simple enough to articulate effectively. Vision must be followed with effectual execution. And I found that so beautiful and very wholesome, holistic. And I'm gonna leave this to soak in, and I'm just gonna give you the word so you can actually give us your well-prepared keynote, and I'm hoping that everyone will have the best time, gaining and taking whatever they actually want to take from that, and leaving everything else on the side so it's beneficial for everyone. So Matthew, thank you so much, and everyone, please keep the questions coming. We will answer them at the end of the presentation. And this is Matthew Kokonen. Thank you so much again.
Well, thanks again for such a great introduction. And again, I'm honored to speak with all of you. And please do make some notes, send some questions. Some of the talks that I give, I try and be very provocative. Today, I'm not trying to be particularly provocative, but I would love, as part of the discussion period after my presentation, to get your thoughts in terms of, where do you agree? Where do you disagree? What would you add? What would you qualify? In addition to any sorts of questions that you might have. So just before I begin, I want to make sure, can you see my screen?
Yes, looks good.
Yes,
all right,
yes, we can
great.
see your screen. Thank you.
Great. So the topic today is really around, all right, great. We work so hard to try and get people, processes, technology, and data all lined up. And as we advance our organizations and the maturity, or adapt to new business needs and challenges, change is inevitable. And for some companies, change is infrequent. There might be a merger and acquisition that drives change, maybe a new management organization forms, and there's a reset button into how we're doing things, or it's time to get that refreshed. Or it could be incremental change. Either way, change is difficult for folks because, quite honestly, everyone's very busy typically, and people are very comfortable in what they know. So today's topic is really about, how do we incentivize change across really our organizational structures, our processes. Perhaps it's the tool that we're using. Maybe we're trying to use data differently than we have in the past. So I just will begin with a disclaimer that this in no way is endorsed by the company I work for. These are purely my opinions, and you won't see anything specific to my company in this presentation, but I just want to be clear that you're getting thoughts from myself. Now, some of our key challenges and there are many around transformation, include a few of these points. And I first want to begin with something that I've heard a lot throughout my career. And, it often happens that, we get a Deloitte or an Accenture or some other sort of consulting company to come in and help us transform. How do we do things better? How do we do things the way that, others are doing it, or is the 21st century way of running portfolios or projects. And so often the reason we choose to take on a new process or a new tool or leverage data a certain way, people say, well, this is best practice. This is why we're doing it. And I want to first stress that this is a real challenge for people trying to do the work. Best practice is purely theoretical. Now, it can be executed, but I think one of the biggest challenges is if that best practice isn't well tailored and strategically aligned to how the organization needs to operate to produce that value, you risk a lot of overhead or bureaucracy or just extras that aren't valuable. And quite honestly, though many people can understand the merits of theory, in the real world, the question is how much of that theory really applies to our working environments. I've already mentioned the fact that, our longstanding processes and tools, we all get comfortable with them. And it's a challenge for us to keep things running and change out the train in which we're riding very quickly at the same time. And it's always interesting to me because at points of transformation, you hear, let's take a business case, for example, a document that is used by governance to help assess whether or not a new project should move forward. And it's been multiple times in my career where I come into an organization, people hate it. It's awful, it's inefficient, it's redundant, it's not value add. And so when a new business case is brought in to replace it, very quickly the conversation shifts to, I hate this new business case. The old one was so much better. I understood it. I could just get it done and I'd move on. And so that comfort in those legacy processes and the relative comparison based off of that change is really, I think, a reality that we all face. Whether it's the organization and how well we cross-functionally work, or maybe it's uneven maturity in our organizations in terms of how we're able to execute project portfolio management. Certainly in my current role, looking across an enterprise, these are key challenges. I work with one group and the processes that we're trying to lay out aren't enough for them. They want more. They want to go deeper. And another group is like, whoa, this is too much. We just need basics, right? So trying to uniformly get an organization working together is a real challenge. So when we look and recognize at these challenges, what are some of the tools and tricks of the trade that can be applied to successfully keep momentum in the right direction for our given transformations? How do we keep it positive and constructive and focused on the key outcomes? The outcome that we're looking to achieve is not best practice. That doesn't help us make more product or serve our patients better, right? Just having more data doesn't help us, right? It's really, what are we going to do with the best practice we apply? What are we going to do with the data that we accumulate? How are we going to make better decisions that take into account perhaps the environment today in which we work, as well as have greater visibility farther and farther into the future to be ready for what's coming? And I'd like to begin first with the concept of incentives. So I think we all can understand this, but I'd like to encourage folks to think even more deliberately about incentives in this regard. And what you can see in the diagram that I've shared here on this slide is actually sourced from Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. This book is largely focused on technology adoption and disruption, but I think the concepts really apply when we think about transforming our organizations from a process perspective as well. We've got a bunch of folks who get it. They're all about best practice. They love it. You know, they are ready to change and move forward. And they're really are innovators and early adopters. But the bulk of the organization sits on the other side of a chasm. And I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of transformations fail where there appears to be great momentum, and within 6 months, maybe a year, you know, it's been pulled way back, and only a subset of those changes are really being used. And people are probably, in many cases, doing duplicative work using legacy processes or tools that they just have always been more comfortable with. And so what helps us get across that chasm are these incentives, a correctly framed incentive. Now you can see there I've put a definition that I've pulled from the dictionary there. But I want to challenge you as we go through some of the tips and tricks and options on how to incentivize folks. You know, for your organization, how do you get people to voluntarily participate in the change that you're trying to execute for your organization? How do you cross the chasm and continue to climb that mountain of change? I think a key consideration when we frame these incentives is we need to understand the why. Like I mentioned, when people ask why and we say, well, that's best practice, that doesn't help them. That isn't a very good why. You know, again, we've established that's theoretical. And as you shape a why for your organization and your constituents, consider there are face value reasons on why a change to a tool or a process or an organization makes sense, but there are second and third order whys as well. The deeper you can go into being able to confidently and credibly answer the why means that you are going to garner more trust within those folks. And there is a deeper investment for them to understand why they're participating. Now, in some cases, when we put in our processes, there could be new work for people that didn't exist before, especially as you mature and you gather more information or you have more robust processes or governance. So for them, the why isn't necessarily going to be easier as a reason. Yet if you were to talk with a senior stakeholder, the answer for them is, well, it's going to be easier for you to get, you know, status or understand the risks or see the mitigations that we've put in place to tackle those risks. So those whys, as you delve into a second and third order, help create a more holistic perspective for those folks who, again, understandably are operating in a much smaller part of the overall picture and don't typically appreciate the fact that their project has a lot of value for that function, and that function then can provide greater value across a value chain of activities that ultimately leads to patients getting served better. So the first one, and I'll just get it out of the way, is peer pressure. You know, a great incentive that we all learn as even small children is that peer pressure does work, right? And perhaps in your organizations, you've heard the phrase wall of fame or wall of shame. I've worked in some organizations that focus on one or the other. Fewer do a good job of focusing on both. Some of this has to deal with kind of the corporate culture. And I think that peer pressure has a place, but if it's only the tool that is used, I think your change is going to suffer in the long run. I think often it is easy for organizations to promote the wall of shame. Here's who didn't put in their status report. Here's the portfolio that isn't following process. And, though that can incentivize near-term corrections in behavior, the risk is that you actually lose more in the long run due to developing a culture where, it is not constructive, the dynamics between the groups. It is not as collaborative. And then the incentive actually drives to not be on the wall of shame or to get yourself on the wall of fame, not the outcomes from the process themselves. And so that risk of moral blowback has to be well considered. Another often used incentive is the mandate. I think we've all been tired at some point or another and just wanted senior management to come down with a strong hammer to say, just do it. No more questions of why you can't or why you won't or, trying to avoid it, just do it. And the important aspect of a mandate is that it closes whatever period existed of discussion and it focuses the organization. Here again, if applied correctly, the mandate does a very effective job of essentially saying, now we run this process, or now we accept this tool, and let's start making it work. The challenge is if that mandate is weak, especially if someone at a senior level makes a mandate and then doesn't hold people accountable, very quickly you can see things slide and become weaker in terms of the adoption of that transformation. We also have management that changes fairly regularly. So you may have a strong leader who holds people accountable, made a very clear and well-executed mandate for your organization. And as soon as they leave, it's back to the way things were, or a suboptimal way things were working. Again, mandates are important parts of the story, but when they're the only one, it's a challenge. Next, if we can tie it to an incontrovertible process, we have the ability to really gain momentum with perhaps a process that's already working and already in flight. So I think importantly, if we can tie our transformation to other processes, we actually lessen the burden on ourselves to make things work. Now, again, using the example of a new process, I've seen this work really well when coupled with financial processes. Those portfolio processes now are not the focus solely themselves. Now we're looking at how those portfolio processes tie to critical financial processes. And now if those processes, interwoven as they are, aren't followed or executed well, then it isn't just you and your organization saying, come on guys, let's follow this new process. It's now an issue with the financial processes being successful. And those financial processes, in many cases, lead to really important outcomes, whether they're accounting activities like depreciation or cash flow management, or it's reporting out to the street around your corporate performance. That syndicated responsibility lessens your effort, and it engenders an understanding of how valuable these processes are beyond what too often can be perceived as just quote unquote best practice. Now the risk is that if there isn't a strong coupling of these processes, you might just be the extra process. And if people are constrained with time or complexity, if you're superfluous, you may still lose out in adoption, right? So making sure that those processes are woven together well and are mutually beneficial to each other, have strong endorsement by key stakeholders, you can actually, like I have in the lower picture, the maglev train that recently is underway in China, you can really fly fast. Something that I think we always try and say, but we have a hard time really ensuring people receive it, is the incentive of making things easier, right? And again, the challenge is not theoretically easier, but truly easier in real life. In my current role, we made a shift about halfway through our transformation to really doubling down on this particular incentive. And the key was communicating all of the duplicative artifacts that were created in Excel, Word documents, PowerPoints, and other tools, to the point that we had retired across all of our various processes 40 unique artifacts that, when you multiplied those 40 unique artifacts for every project or every functional process, etc., you were talking about armies of people's time being given back to them and made simpler. And again, there's an important element of trust that the work hasn't just been moved, it truly has been made easier. That duplication of effort previously that was non-value add but still necessary to the old way of working is truly resolved. This making it easier can come really to bear with well-executed technology and the use of data tools like Power BI or Tableau. So for example, if you can leverage a database to remove the redundancy of putting in that project name across a project initiation form, a business case, a charter, your status report slides, and the list goes on, and you just put it in once and it's set, think about all of the data that we track across our projects and our portfolio, and how much time could be saved, and the general quality of that data as we remove that duplication. The key to understanding this, though, is even if it's easier, change is still hard. So I've hit a number of different ways of incentivizing transformation and the adoption of new processes, technology, or the use of data in new ways. And the thing that I want to stress is that one size doesn't fit all. A critical strategy is how to weave together multiple incentives and adapting those combinations of multiple incentives appropriately for each of the groups and stakeholders that you're working with. Understanding the people's needs and being able to communicate with them effectively across these incentives dramatically increases your chances of success. And as you've heard, I really want to challenge all of you to think about how often you're using theoretical incentives as opposed to true incentives, true practical value propositions that people can experience. And understanding that at face value, there's benefit from the change, but think deeper, try and connect the dots very clearly with and for people on the second and third order benefits that come from the change. With that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of these thoughts. I'd like to open it up to any questions. You know, where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Where would you add, you know, to some of these incentives?
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew. That was really wonderful. It was really wonderful for me to actually understand some of it as well, as I don't come from the background of PPM and pharmaceuticals. And you know, yeah, exactly. I would like to invite anyone who'd like to maybe even unmute yourself to ask questions. I'm gonna wait, and you know, don't be shy.
Hi, this is Nicole. I've got a comment and also a question.
Hello, thank you.
So I definitely, you know, agree on this thing about best practices. It gets bandied around so much. It gets used and sort of people get slapped around their ears with it, really. And it's such empty words because, as you say, it's not tailored and it's not always aligned with you know what the strategy is. So I wonder, where have you got any examples where you I don't know, could turn one of these face values in something more specific, in something more tangible to the actual people on the shop floor?
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, anything that you'd like to say about that, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and hopefully, you know, you all challenge folks, especially when consultants come in. And I can say this with a bit of a smile because I spent, you know, little over 8 years as a consultant doing a lot of these transformation work. So you're hearing it from, as they say in the United States, the horse's mouth. New saying for some of you maybe. But yeah, don't accept the why being, oh, because that's best practice, right? To answer your question around an example, so one of the things that has been very effective is ensuring that as you plan for launching a new change, let's say it's a change in governance, you know, you've got to get people the process defined. You've got to make sure that your tools will accommodate and gather the information necessary to drive that governance process. You're going to need to train people. The question is do you lead with, this is what we're doing, or do you lead with, this is what you're getting when you do this, right? And focusing on the reporting and the decisions that are going to be made as a result of the update to governance are really key. So we did this around, say, our non-capital projects had much less governance than our capital projects, right? They're a little bit looser. They're still very important. They're cross-functional. But you know, a lot of people are like, you know, these are the kinds of projects we just need to do. The business just needs to keep moving these along. And so why is there going to be benefit from this governance? And if we can show the multitude of benefits to, shall we say, those resource managers having an understanding of what their people are working on to make better decisions, and showing them the kinds of reports that they're going to have, or a governing body to be able to better control and prioritize demand, and then have insight in terms of where things are at, in contrast to perhaps today where things just happen and there's really no ability to prioritize or arrest these efforts from happening, is a big part of it. But I think the second part, which is critical beyond leading with the reporting, is having a true example, a real world example that you can showcase soon after that process or that, advancement of governance goes live. Because people will say, this is great, the report looks nice, I've always wanted to see what's going on, this is great, but very quickly, people are going to struggle with, especially governance advancements. They're going to say, oh, this is now moves slower. We have to move faster. Why are we doing this? And if you can say, look, I was able to give back these 20 people time, or get them working, 50% over full time, and now they're working a more reasonable schedule, something that is meaningful for the organization, where they saw the process drive a decision to say no, in this example, that is something that then can be passed around, not just by you and your group who's trying to promote these changes, but amongst the people. They can, if they're talking amongst themselves, or, one person comes to the water cooler and says, I don't know about this new stuff, it was so much easier, we just got the work done. Now other people are like, yeah, but I now am not having to work on this anymore, and this process, I think, could really help us if they keep this up, right? And so in a more concise answer, start with reporting, as a key justification, not the process change itself, and then make sure that you've got teed up a valuable use case that then can be used to further justify deeper adoption and use.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Nicole, for hopping in and asking the question. I'm sure people will find it helpful as well. So thank you, Nicole. We've got a comment from Peter. Thank you. I agree with best practice. Best for one company does not mean best for the other. I'm not sure if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think this is the challenge with the amount of investment that companies make in consulting services. And I think it's an opportunity for us to challenge the value of what a company or a consultant brings to the table. Quite honestly, if you invite one of the large consultancies into your organization, just understand that effectively they took GSK's branding off of that deck and put your branding there. And they had done that probably 2 other times. The reason why we call so often those materials shelfware is for exactly that comment. I think it's spot on. Best practice is a body of knowledge with well thought out tips, tricks, and tools that need to be adapted for your companies. And if you spend, in some cases, hundreds, I've seen companies spend millions of dollars on these transformations only for these slides to just go stale and there to be no real value to the change. Think of what that money could be used for otherwise, right? So, I'm encouraged that, there isn't too much disagreement that best practice has to be tailored, and it has a place. It just cannot be a justification for why we're changing, right?
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you both. We've got a question from Vima. Are there incentives or best practices that are better for transformation and sustained adoption within large or small organizations?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question.
Thank you. Thank you,
thematically, are there common incentives for smaller or larger organizations? And I would say that often smaller organizations are much more about agility. They're, generally speaking, much more collaborative in their cultures. They're also very cross-functional. right? Smaller organizations generally are less change resistant than larger organizations. So I think for small companies, I would take a lot of the incentives that I shared here and I would package them appropriately, but really looking at positives, really trying to keep it positive, focusing on, doubling down on agility, on collaboration, on mutual benefit, on greater, coordination. Larger organizations are like a larger ship in the sea. You can't turn a large crate ship or oil tanker quickly, right? There is just too many people, and the structure of decision making is at a different scale, right? So I would not discount positive messaging, but I think the balance of being able to establish clearer mandates and tying them to existing processes that are really business critical need to be more of a focus in a larger organization as compared to a smaller one. Again, you don't want to go too negative, but just inherently with more people in the mix, it means that if you go back to that curve, you've got more people who will be inherently naysayers. Statistically, if you have 10 people, you know that there's going to be at least one person who isn't really excited about that change. Well, if your organization is 10 times greater, you now have 10 people that, using this arbitrary statistic, that are naysayers, right? And those people are going to be a louder voice. The final thing that I'd add to that is, those negative voices disproportionately color your transformation. And that's both in practice and perception. So based off of studies I've seen, one clearly stated negative comment in an organization is only balanced out by 5 equally strong positive statements. So if you've got, in my example, 10 people making each their own comment, you're going to need to get 50, additional positive comments to try and balance it. So will management hear those comments and have greater confidence in the transformation that you're leading? Or will those negative comments, potentially erode some of the credibility or trust that we're doing the right things correctly? Remember, people are much more vocal about negative things than positive things. So I think one way of mitigating that is, again, with that previous recommendation, having that use case of where there was a clear win, a real incontrovertible win for the organization based off of your process, helps get ahead of those negative messages and really sets up your transformation for success.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was actually that was the last question. So yeah, thank you everyone. But if anyone else has anything else to ask Matthew while we have him online, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. I will give it a few more minutes, and then also feel free to start up a conversation if anything else comes to your mind later on the workout platform. It's all for you, as I said. Maybe I would have a question for you, Matthew. From your presentation that you've given us today, what would you want your audience to do differently as a result of having heard your presentation? Is there anything that you feel like would be the biggest takeaway?
I would say, of a few messages that I've put out there, I would love for folks to think about second and third order value, right?
And
So often I
mhm.
think we're like, oh, why do we do a status report? Because now I can see the status on that project, right? But what is the next level of benefit? How does that status report provide deeper value? And then how does that value provide even deeper value? And creating those additional linkages of value can do everything from start promoting insights to informing other behaviors across your processes and in terms of delivery. And they may also help reinforce a greater network of collaboration and coordination within your organization. So, think about, and grapple with, those second and third order benefits. How do you get benefit beyond just that face value kind of basic, basic understood benefit of doing status reports? How can you use status reports to, grow your influence in the organization or grow other value beyond that face value?
I love that, because these seem to be the provocative questions that you kind of said at the beginning, how you're not going to keep this that provocative as you would normally do, but provocative in a way that it will make people think deeper about the processes that they're doing and implementing into their business. There are no more questions, but as I said, please feel free to reach out to me or to Matthew. There's actually a comment from Alice, really enjoying to hearing your thoughts. Thank you for sharing. But yeah, thank you, Alice. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. This was really, really wonderful. Keep the conversation going. The platform, if you'd like, feel free to, connect with one another. And I will just give a word to say anything final to Matthew, if you'd like to say anything. Thank you. Great keynote. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. If you were already on board with these, hopefully this helped encourage you to keep it up. And just remember, you don't climb a mountain in a single step. These are transformation is hard. Moving your organization is hard. Take each step, thoughtful as it can be, with a vision for achieve climbing that mountain. So good luck, everyone. And again, it was a pleasure to speak with you all today. Thanks for your comments and questions. They were great.
Yeah, thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us. We've got another online webinar tomorrow and for another 3 to 4 weeks. And I'm just going to turn my video on just so you know I'm real, not a robot. And yeah, I would like to thank everyone. Feel free to join us at a PPM workout platform, keep the conversations going. And I will see you tomorrow again with another guest. We've got Marcelo Costa with his case study tomorrow. So invite your peers and colleagues, whoever might benefit from the discussion that will be there afterwards, after the presentation. And this, as all sessions are being recorded, so whoever would like to get back to it, and anyone who missed those, it will be all posted online our YouTube channel, Y Summits. And with that, I'm gonna say a few more comments. Great keynote. Thanks, Matthew. Thank you very much. Nice and structured, interesting topic. Thank you again, Matthew. It's a great feedback. And if you'd like, feel free to share the entire presentation at the PPM platform, workout platform. It seems to be really, really helpful for everyone. So feel free to share.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you, Katie, to figure that out.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks again, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I will see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.